Do you feel that everything is stagnant, as if it's frozen in time, forgotten by the flow of life? But what you need to understand, now, is that this silence isn't abandonment. It's a summons. The feeling that nothing is moving, that everything has fallen apart around you, isn't a cruel test from the universe. It is the quantum field itself dismantling your old version, clearing the invisible ties that still connected you to scarcity, doubt, and fear. This discomfort you are living isn't a delay, it is a realignment. It is the vibrational vacuum preparing the stage for your new self. What seems to be the end is, in fact, the quantum womb of your new reality. A fertile space where the apparent collapse is just the soil being tilled so that a new frequency can sprout. Every disconnection, every silence, every absence is the field saying, prepare for the new timeline. Are you ready to cross the vacuum? When everything begins to fall apart, when structures collapse without explanation, when formerly essential people move away, and what once flowed now stagnates. This is not the end, it is the beginning. The chaos isn't random. It is the intentional collapse of old frequencies that no longer support the new version of who you are becoming. And as much as it seems like punishment, it is liberation in a vibrational disguise. You look around and no longer recognize anything. The feeling is one of loss, of isolation, of internal and external deconstruction. But this apparent ruin is the clearest sign that the quantum field has begun to reorganize everything. What is crumbling? Isn't you, it is what you no longer are. Imagine a subtle, invisible, but real earthquake. It silently shakes the vibrational foundations of your life. The old foundations, made of fears, repetitions, unconscious contracts, are being broken. And this hurts. Because the soul knows it is being redesigned. But the mind wants to resist. You are not broken. You are in identity reprogramming. This chaotic phase is like a dark cocoon, where the caterpillar is no longer what it was, but still doesn't see itself as a butterfly. It is a transitional space, confusing, formless, without visible guarantees. But it is there that the miracle happens. The collapse on the outside mirrors the collapse on the inside. And this is necessary, because the frequency that sustained your old version can no longer hold the expansion that the field wants to deliver to you. You are not being tested. You are being recalibrated. The field doesn't want to know if you are strong. It wants to know if you are ready to vibrate in coherence with your original purpose. Therefore, everything that is no longer aligned begins to move away, as if the entire universe were saying, don't insist on what has already died. People move away because their frequencies no longer resonate with yours. The job loses meaning because your soul no longer fits in that form. The body gets sick because it is somaticizing old vibrational codes that need to be released. Everything speaks, everything reveals, everything points to the awakening. But to awaken, one must cross the chaos, without clinging, without trying to fix it, without trying to understand everything with the mind, because this is not a collapse. It is the field reorganizing everything within you. The old identity, the one based on survival, control, and effort, screams not to die. It wants to maintain dominance. But you have already begun to vibrate differently, and this causes an internal war. But this war is the birth. All pain has a purpose when you understand that it carries reconfiguration, codes, and it is at this point that many give up. They think they have failed. They think they are being punished. But listen, the chaos is a silent ceremony where your new identity begins to emerge. And there's no way to access the new if you are still stuck with the emotional tools of the old. So, when everything seems to be crumbling, breathe. And remember, you are not being tested. You are being updated. The field doesn't want you to go through trials. It wants you to remember who you are when everything around you seems to erase you. And this remembrance only happens when the old is forcibly removed, vibrationally, emotionally, spiritually. So, accept the chaos with reverence. Honor the emptiness. Celebrate the collapse. Because it is there, in what seems to be the end, that the silent beginning of the new timeline happens. The quantum vacuum isn't absence. It isn't nothing. It isn't emptiness in the human sense of the word. The vacuum is invisible fullness. It is the cosmic womb of creation where the seeds of a new reality are gestated before they emerge into the visible plane. When you feel that everything is stopped, when the silence seems deafening and external, movement disappears, it isn't abandonment from the field. It is the field preparing the ground, removing old codes, clearing memories that no longer support your expansion. This space of silence is uncomfortable because the mind fears what it cannot control. It screams for answers, demands explanations, seeks immediate proof that it isn't being forgotten. But the truth is that silence is the greatest proof that realignment has already begun. It is in the apparent nothingness that the greatest vibrational constructions are happening. The field doesn't work in noise, but in the interval. It doesn't act in haste, but in the precise rhythm of resonance. Silence isn't a punishment. It is the sacred interval that gives meaning to the melody of your existence. In the vacuum, every attempt to force things loses its meaning. The field doesn't respond to effort, doesn't move through anxiety, isn't influenced by empty rituals or by repeated words without coherence. It responds to the real frequency, to the vibrational signature you hold within, far from the eyes, far from the masks. That's why, when you resist the vacuum, trying to rush the process or seeking to fill the silence with noise, you not only prolong the discomfort, but also delay the quantum leap that is already underway. Imagine an invisible temple being erected around you. Each old stone is removed. Each crack is healed. Each wall is repositioned. From the outside, you only perceive dust, lack of structure, a feeling of loss. But in reality, a new altar is being erected. An invisible architecture is already being aligned to sustain your expansion. The vacuum is the construction site where your new version is being built. What you call a delay, the field calls a gestation. What seems like a pause is, in fact, the vibrational womb guarding the seed until it is mature enough to break the surface. The butterfly isn't born before its time. The tree doesn't rush to break through the earth. In the same way, your process cannot be accelerated by impatience. It needs the fertile darkness of the vacuum for each code to establish itself firmly. The mind fears this emptiness, because in it, there are no visible guarantees, but the spirit recognizes this space as the matrix of creation. That's why the call now is for surrender, not to give up, but to trust. Letting go of control doesn't mean passivity. It means aligning with the intelligence that sustains entire galaxies, and that is now sustaining your leap. For you to be able to cross the vacuum without getting lost, 3 practical keys become powerful anchors. Conscious breathing. Breathe in for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 6. Each breathing cycle is a message to the field. I trust in the rhythm of the universe. You are not trying to control. You are learning to synchronize with the pulse of the vacuum. In the face of silence, ask, what is this emptiness creating space for? This question shifts you from anxiety about the result to openness to the potential. The emptiness is not an end, it is space for the new. This question awakens the perception that something is being gestated, even if you don't see it yet. Place your hand over your chest, close your eyes, and declare, I anchor my frequency now. This simple gesture sends a message to your body and to the field that you are present. You are firm, you are vibrating in coherence, even in the midst of silence. These practices are not magical rituals, but bridges of consciousness. They don't force the field to act, but they align it with your willingness to remain in the interval without running from it. Every time you breathe consciously, ask the emptiness what it is preparing, and anchor your hand on your chest, you reaffirm, I accept the process. I honor the vacuum. I trust in the quantum. The vacuum is not a phase to be overcome. It is an initiation to be crossed. It teaches you to abandon haste, to recognize that the field doesn't work according to human time, but according to the frequency of your surrender. It reveals that, behind the apparent nothingness, there is a fullness so dense that it cannot be perceived by the eyes. That's why, when you feel you are alone, when the answers don't come, when the silence prolongs, remember, the vacuum is the most sacred place you can be. It is in it that you are being cleansed, recalibrated, and prepared to sustain the new timeline that has already been activated. You have not been abandoned. You have been taken to the most fertile place in the universe. The vacuum is not absence. The vacuum is potential. Before we continue, a pause. If this video is being helpful to you, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and write in the comments what you are feeling at this moment. This strengthens the energy of this community and further anchors this message in your life. The crossing of chaos and the permanence in the vacuum are not ends in themselves. They are portals. They are thresholds between what you were and what you are becoming. Every moment of deconstruction, every silence that seemed unbearable, every absence of answers was the invisible work of the field preparing you for the most profound revelation. The vibrational death of the old identity for the birth of the new one. The old version of you was shaped by effort, by survival, by control. It was a self that needed to prove worth, that sought acceptance, that feared loss. This self lived as someone who carried a burden, trying to hold the world with its own hands. But this self no longer sustains the frequency of the leap. It needs to be uninstalled. Like an old software that crashes the system, it needs to give way to the new code. This process isn't smooth because the old self doesn't want to die. It resists, it screams, it tries to convince you that without it, you won't have security. It reminds you of all the times that control seemed to protect you, of all the times that effort brought immediate results. But now, in the quantum field, those tools no longer work. The field doesn't respond to trying, only to vibrational coherence. That's why the transition is painful, because it's not just external change, it's internal dissolution. Your mind wants certainties, but the field demands surrender. Your old identity seeks familiar references, but the new self can only be born in trust in the invisible. This is the invisible struggle you feel, not between failure and victory, but between what dies and what is born within you. Imagine an old temple being demolished stone by stone, not because it was cursed, but because it no longer holds the greatness of the presence that needs to inhabit it. This temple falls. Its columns break, its walls crumble, and in its place, an open, clean, fertile space emerges, ready to erect a new altar. So it is with you. The old structure of who you believed you were is being torn down so that a new vibrational altar can be erected within you. This new self doesn't live in survival, but in trust. It doesn't live in trying, but in coherence. It doesn't live in blind effort, but in conscious surrender. It doesn't need to prove anything because it already vibrates in alignment with what it is. And when you anchor that frequency, the field responds immediately because the frequency doesn't lie. This identity that is born is not in a hurry because it knows that time is just the surface of eternity. It doesn't fear the silence because it recognizes the vacuum as the source. It doesn't seek approval because it already feels complete in resonance with the all. This new self is the fruit of the quantum awakening, a consciousness that is no longer limited to the narratives of the past, but that anchors itself in the vibration of what is already real, even before it manifests. You realize that you no longer need to carry the weight of proving your worth. The energy of control that once seemed necessary begins to dissolve, and, in its place, a deep trust blossoms. Not naive trust, but mature, conscious, anchored trust. You understand that letting go is not giving up. It is making space for the field to manifest what is already prepared. This birth is not instantaneous. Just as new software takes time to be installed, just as the new temple needs to be erected with patience and solidity, the identity that emerges in you demands constancy. Every conscious breath, every surrender in the face of the vacuum, every choice to trust in the invisible is a brick placed in this new altar, and little by little you begin to perceive signs. Not immediate external signs, but unequivocal internal vibrations. A peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a clarity that arises without effort, a gentle strength that sustains your journey. This is proof that the new self is already active. The old self fought to create realities. The new self only vibrates and watches reality adjust itself. The old self lived at war with time. The new self recognizes that everything happens at the perfect rhythm. The old self sought external securities. The new self rests in internal coherence. This is the quantum awakening, the replacement of a fragile, limited, and effort-based identity with an aligned, anchored, and vibrationally coherent identity. You are no longer who you were, and although your mind still tries to hold on to the wreckage of the old temple, your soul is already walking among the corridors of the new altar. Do not fight against this transition. Do not fear the vibrational death of what you believed yourself to be. The field isn't taking anything from you. It is revealing who you always were. You are not losing identity. You are recovering essence. Therefore, surrender consciously, not as one who gives up, but as one who gives oneself to the current that carries one to the ocean. Not as one who lets go out of weakness, but as one who lets go out of trust. This surrender is the key, because the field can only respond fully when you stop trying to control it and begin to vibrate in coherence with it. And remember, the frequency doesn't lie. You can say words of faith, you can repeat affirmations, you can do rituals. But if your frequency is fear, the field responds with fear. If your frequency is trust, the field responds with trust. If your frequency is coherence, the field responds with coherence. There is no deception on the vibrational level. That's why this is the moment to anchor, to remain firm, to sustain the frequency of the new self. Because the field is already ready to respond. It always has been. And now, on the threshold between what dies and what is born, all you need to do is vibrate in truth, in trust, in surrender. You are not just changing phases, you are changing identity. You are not just adjusting circumstances, you are crossing an initiation. You are not just surviving chaos, you are emerging as a new being. And this is how the quantum awakening happens. Silent, profound, inevitable. Now that you have crossed the chaos, remained in the vacuum, and witnessed the new identity, emerge, you must understand, everything you lived wasn't a test, but preparation. The discomfort wasn't punishment, it was realignment. The silence wasn't abandonment, it was gestation. The chaos wasn't failure, it was the field removing everything that no longer served you. You weren't left adrift, but were guided to the most fertile space in the universe, the vibrational interval where the new self is born. What seemed like ruin was just the old software being uninstalled, the old temple being torn down, so that your true essence could occupy the place that was always hers. Listen to this revelation. What you call emptiness is, in fact, the waiting room for your quantum leap. It is there, in the silence, in the darkness, in the pause, that the field organizes the codes, repositions the frequencies, and prepares the manifestation of what already vibrates as a reality in your soul. That's why, when the silence becomes too loud, when it seems like nothing is happening, remember, the field is listening to your frequency. It is not words that move, it is not rituals that convince, but the vibration that you sustain with firmness. And if that frequency is trust, the field is already responding. You are not on a test. You are in reprogramming. You are not being punished. You are being expanded. You are not alone. You are anchored in the very heart of the quantum. The call now is simple and profound. Remain firm. Don't give up in the interval. Don't abandon the crossing when the portal is about to open. Continue sustaining your frequency. Continue breathing to the rhythm of the field. Continue surrendering to the vacuum as one who trusts in the cosmic womb of creation. Because the leap is already underway. The timeline is already being gestated, and your new identity has already begun to radiate beyond the invisible. What once seemed like darkness, you now know, is fertile soil. What seemed like a delay, you now recognize, is preparation. What seemed like the end, you now understand, is the beginning, and so the field seals this truth in you. It is not a test, it is quantum reprogramming. If this message has anchored in you, write in the comments, "I trust in the quantum." This seals your decision in the field and strengthens the vibration of this entire community.